The bitter wind howled through the Montana plains on that February night in 1884, and Jack Owens had given up on finding warmth in anything but the whiskey bottle that sat empty on his table. He pulled his worn coat tighter and headed toward the barn to check on his horses one last time before the storm hit full force, never expecting to find a ghost of a woman curled between two hay bales, her lips blue and trembling. She looked up at him with eyes that held both terror and resignation, and when she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper that cut through the howling wind. "I'll work for warmth." Jack stood frozen for a moment, lantern raised high, taking in the sight of her. She could not have been more than 20 years old, with long dark hair matted against her pale face and a thin dress that was completely inadequate for Montana winter. Her hands were wrapped around herself, fingers red and swollen from the cold. She was not wearing shoes and her feet were bleeding. "Good God, woman," Jack said, setting down the lantern and immediately removing his coat. "You will die out here. Come inside now." She flinched when he approached and he saw the fear flash across her face. He stopped, holding the coat out at arm's length. "I am not going to hurt you. But you need to get warm or you will not make it through the night." She hesitated, her whole body shaking so violently that her teeth chattered. Finally, she reached out and took the coat, wrapping it around her shoulders. Jack picked up the lantern and gestured toward the house. "Can you walk?" "I think so," she managed, but when she tried to stand, her legs buckled beneath her. Jack caught her before she hit the ground, feeling how light she was, how her whole body trembled against him. "I am going to carry you," he said. "Is that all right?" She nodded weakly, and he lifted her as gently as he could, her head falling against his chest. As he carried her across the yard toward his small ranch house, he felt her tears soaking through his shirt. The wind whipped around them, and he quickened his pace, kicking open the door and bringing her into the warmth of his home. The fire had burned down to embers, and he laid her carefully on the worn sofa before quickly adding wood to the fireplace. Flames sprang to life, and the room began to brighten. He turned back to her and saw that she was watching him with those large, frightened eyes. "My name is Jack Owens," he said, keeping his voice gentle. "This is my ranch about 5 miles north of Verde. You are safe here. Nobody is going to hurt you." "Eliza," she whispered. "Eliza Turner. Eliza, I need to get you warm. Your feet are bleeding and you are half frozen. I have some blankets and I can heat some water. Have you eaten?" She shook her head and he saw tears spill down her cheeks again. "I am sorry. I did not mean to intrude. I just needed somewhere warm. I can work. I can cook and clean and tend animals. I will not be a burden." "You are not intruding and we will talk about work later," Jack said firmly. "Right now, you need to get warm and eat something. That is all that matters." He moved quickly, pulling every blanket he owned from the chest in his bedroom and piling them around her. He filled a pot with water and hung it over the fire to heat, then rummaged through his cupboards for something to feed her. He found some bread and cheese and started making a simple soup with the vegetables he had stored. As he worked, he kept glancing over at her. She had stopped shaking quite so violently, but she still looked terrified. Her eyes followed his every movement, and he could see the tension in her shoulders. She was ready to run at any moment. "I have lived alone here for 3 years," he said, trying to fill the silence with something that might ease her fear. "It is not much, but it is home. I raise horses mostly, and do some work in town when I need extra money. It gets lonely out here, so I apologize if my conversation skills are lacking." "Why do you live alone?" she asked, her voice still quiet but a bit stronger now. Jack stirred the soup, considering how much to tell her. "My wife died 4 years ago, cholera outbreak. After she passed, I could not stay in the town where we had lived, too many memories, so I came out here and started fresh." "I am sorry," Eliza said, and he heard genuine sympathy in her voice. "It was a long time ago," Jack replied, though the words still carried weight. "I have made my peace with it, mostly. What about you? How did you end up in my barn on the coldest night of the year with no coat or shoes?" She was quiet for so long that he thought she might not answer. He brought her a bowl of soup and a piece of bread, settling into the chair across from her. She took the bowl with trembling hands and sipped carefully, her eyes closing in relief at the warmth. "I was married too," she finally said, "to a man named Robert Turner. We lived in a town about 30 miles from here. He seemed kind when we were courting, but after we married, he changed. Or maybe he just stopped pretending. He was cruel. He would drink and then he would hurt me." Jack felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression neutral, letting her speak. "Last week, I tried to leave. I packed a bag and waited until he passed out drunk, then I ran. But he woke up and found me. He beat me worse than he ever had before and locked me in the cellar. Said I would stay there until I learned my place. But there was a small window, and I managed to break it and squeeze through. That was yesterday morning. I have been walking ever since, trying to get as far away as possible. I had to leave everything behind. No bag, no coat, no shoes. I just ran." "He will come looking for you," Jack said, and it was not a question. "I know," Eliza whispered, fresh tears falling, "but I could not stay. He was going to kill me eventually. I know he was. I would rather die out here than go back to him." Jack stood and walked to his bedroom, returning with a pair of wool socks and some cloth bandages. He knelt in front of the sofa. "Let me look at your feet." She hesitated, then pulled her feet out from under the blankets. They were cut and bruised, with dried blood caked around the wounds. Jack worked carefully, cleaning them with warm water and wrapping them gently in the bandages. His touch was steady and sure, and he noticed that she had stopped flinching away from him. "You are safe here," he said again, looking up at her. "If your husband comes looking, he will have to go through me. And I promise you, Eliza, I will not let him take you back." Something shifted in her expression then, a tiny crack in the wall of fear. "Why would you help me? You do not know me." "Because it is the right thing to do," Jack said simply. "And because no one deserves to live in fear like that. You can stay here as long as you need. If you want to work, that is fine. I could use the help. But you do not owe me anything for giving you shelter. This is not a transaction. This is just humanity." Eliza started crying in earnest then, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. Jack stood awkwardly, unsure what to do, then sat beside her on the sofa and let her cry against his shoulder. He had not been this close to another person in 3 years, and something about it felt both foreign and deeply right. When her tears finally subsided, she pulled back and wiped her eyes. "I am sorry. I have not felt safe in so long. I did not know what it felt like anymore." "You do not need to apologize," Jack said. "You have been through hell. Cry as much as you need to." She managed a weak smile, the first he had seen from her. "Thank you, Jack. I do not know how I will ever repay you for this kindness." "Just get better," he said. "That is all the repayment I need." Over the next few days, the storm raged outside while Eliza slowly recovered inside the warm house. Jack gave her his bed and slept on the sofa, ignoring her protests. He cooked simple meals and brought her books to read, and gradually he watched the color return to her cheeks and the fear fade from her eyes. She was funny, he discovered. Despite everything she had been through, she had a quick wit and a sharp sense of humor. She made him laugh in ways he had not laughed in years. And she was smart, able to discuss everything from politics to poetry with an insight that surprised him. "My mother was a teacher," she explained one evening as they sat by the fire. "She insisted I get a proper education, even though my father thought it was a waste for a girl. She taught me to read when I was 4 and never stopped teaching me after that. She died when I was 16, and I think part of me died with her. My father remarried quickly to a woman who did not like me, and I married Robert a year later to escape that house. I jumped from one prison to another. Your mother sounds like she was a remarkable woman, Jack said. She was, Eliza agreed, a sad smile on her face. She would have told me to run from Robert years ago. She would have been disappointed that I stayed as long as I did. You survived, Jack said. That takes strength. Do not discount that. By the end of the first week, Eliza was up and moving around the house. She insisted on cooking dinner, and Jack came in from feeding the horses to find the table set and a proper meal waiting for him. It was the first time in 3 years that someone else had cooked for him, and he felt an unexpected lump in his throat. "This is wonderful," he said after the first bite. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" "My mother," Eliza said. She believed that cooking was an art form. She could make anything taste good, even when we had very little. I used to help her in the kitchen every day. They fell into an easy routine after that. Jack would wake early and tend to the horses and other animals, while Eliza would prepare breakfast. They would eat together, talking about everything and nothing. Then Jack would head out to work on the ranch while Eliza cleaned and cooked and did mending. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk. Or sometimes Jack would play the old guitar that had been gathering dust in the corner, and Eliza would sing. She had a beautiful voice, clear and strong, and when she sang, Jack could see past all the hurt to the woman she must have been before Robert Turner broke her spirit. He found himself looking forward to those evenings more than anything else in his day, but the fear never fully left her eyes. Every time there was an unexpected sound or a horse whinnied in the barn, she would tense up, her gaze darting to the door. Jack knew that she was waiting for Robert to show up, and he found himself preparing for that confrontation as well. He cleaned his rifle and kept it loaded by the door. He made sure the doors were locked at night. He was ready to protect her, whatever it took. One morning, nearly 3 weeks after he had found her in his barn, Jack came in from the cold to find Eliza standing at the window, staring out at the snow-covered landscape with a strange expression on her face. "What is it?" he asked, hanging his coat by the door. "I just realized that I am happy," she said, turning to look at him. "For the first time in years, I woke up this morning and felt something other than dread. I felt happy, and it terrified me because I do not know how long it will last." Jack crossed the room to stand beside her. "You deserve to be happy, Eliza. You deserve a life where you are not afraid all the time." "I know," she said quietly. "But Robert is still out there. He will not just let me go. Men like him never do. He will come for me eventually. And I will be here when he does," Jack said firmly. "You are not alone anymore." She looked up at him, and something passed between them in that moment, something unspoken but profound. Jack felt it settle in his chest, warm and unfamiliar. It had been so long since he had let himself feel anything for anyone, but Eliza had somehow slipped past his defenses without him even noticing. "Jack," she said softly, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I think I am falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them. Jack's heart hammered in his chest, and he realized that he had been falling for her too slowly and steadily, from the moment she had whispered those words in his barn, but he had not let himself acknowledge it until now. "Eliza," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I am still married. To Robert. Even if I wanted to be with you, I cannot. It would not be legal or right." "I know," Jack said, though the words felt like stones in his mouth. "But that does not change how I feel. I care about you, Eliza, more than I have cared about anyone since my wife died. When you are ready, when you are free, I will be here. And if you do not want that, if you just want to stay friends, I will accept that too. But I needed you to know." Tears filled her eyes, but she was smiling. "I want that. I want to be free and I want to be with you, but you are right. I need to end my marriage first. I need to face Robert." "We will figure it out together," Jack promised, and then, unable to help himself, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her cheek, and she leaned into his touch with a soft sigh. The moment was broken by the sound of hoofbeats in the yard. They both froze, and Eliza's face went white with fear. "Stay here," Jack said, grabbing his rifle from beside the door. "Do not come out no matter what you hear." "Jack, be careful," Eliza pleaded, but he was already stepping out onto the porch. A man sat on a large black horse in the yard, and even from a distance, Jack could see the meanness in his face. He was big, with a thick beard and cold eyes that swept over the ranch with disdain. "Can I help you?" Jack called out, keeping his rifle lowered but ready. "Looking for my wife," the man said, his voice rough. "Been told she might be in these parts. Pretty little thing, dark hair about this tall." He held his hand up to indicate Eliza's height. "Name is Eliza Turner. You seen her?" "I have not seen anyone matching that description," Jack lied smoothly. "But there are several ranches in the area. You might try asking in town." Robert Turner's eyes narrowed. "You are lying. I can see it in your face. She is in there, is not she? That is my wife, and you are harboring her." "That is against the law." "What is against the law is beating a woman half to death," Jack said, his voice hardening. "And even if your wife was here, which I am not saying she is, I would not let you take her. A man who raises his hand to a woman is no man at all." Robert dismounted, his hand moving to the gun at his hip. "You do not have any right to keep her from me. She is my property." "She is a human being," Jack said, raising his rifle now. "And you need to leave my property, now. Or what? You will shoot me for trying to take back what is mine." "If I have to." The two men stared at each other across the yard, the tension thick enough to cut. Jack's finger rested on the trigger, and he could see Robert calculating his chances. Finally, Robert spat in the snow and remounted his horse. "This is not over," he snarled. "I will be back, and I will bring the law with me. We will see how brave you are then." He wheeled his horse around and galloped off, leaving Jack standing on the porch with his heart racing. He waited until Robert disappeared from sight before going back inside, where he found Eliza standing in the middle of the room, her face stricken. "He found me," she whispered. "I knew he would, but I hoped I had more time." "He is gone for now," Jack said, setting the rifle down. "But he was right about one thing. He can bring the law back with him. Legally, you are still his wife. A judge might force you to return to him." "Then I will run again," Eliza said, her voice desperate. "I will go somewhere he cannot find me." "No," Jack said firmly. "We are not running. We are going to fight this the right way. There has to be something we can do legally." "Like what?" "Divorce is nearly impossible to get, especially for a woman, and even if I could, Robert would never agree to it." "There are grounds for divorce," Jack insisted. "Cruelty, abandonment. We just need to find a lawyer who will take your case." "With what money?" Eliza asked bitterly. "I have nothing, and lawyers do not work for free." "I have some money saved," Jack said. "Not a lot, but enough. We will go to Verdi tomorrow and talk to someone. There has to be a way." Eliza looked at him with such gratitude and something deeper that Jack felt his breath catch. "Why are you doing all this for me?" "Because I love you," Jack said, the words coming out before he could stop them. "I know it is fast, and I know the timing is terrible, but it is the truth. I love you, Eliza, and I am not going to let that man hurt you ever again." She crossed the room in 3 quick steps and wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. He held her tightly, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his. In that moment, he knew he would do anything to keep her safe. The next morning, they rode into Verde together. It was a small town, just a main street with a handful of shops and businesses. Jack helped Eliza down from the horse, noting how nervous she looked as her eyes scanned the street. "It is all right," he said quietly. "I am right here with you." They found the lawyer's office above the general store, a cramped space filled with books and papers. The lawyer himself was a small man with spectacles and thinning hair, but his eyes were sharp and intelligent. "Mr. Owens," he said, shaking Jack's hand, "and you must be Miss Turner. Please sit down. Now, what can I do for you?" Eliza told her story, her voice shaking at first but growing stronger as she went on. She described the beatings, the threats, the night she finally fled. Jack watched the lawyer's face, trying to gauge his reaction. When Eliza finished, there was a long silence. "This is a difficult case," the lawyer finally said. "Montana has somewhat progressive divorce laws compared to some states, but proving cruelty can be challenging. You would need witnesses, evidence. Do you have any of that?" "I have scars," Eliza said quietly, "from where he hurt me. And there were neighbors who must have heard the fights. Maybe they would testify." "Maybe," the lawyer said doubtfully. "But people are often reluctant to get involved in marital disputes. They see it as a private matter. And even if we can prove cruelty, your husband will contest the divorce. He already came looking for you, which shows he is not willing to let you go easily. This could take months, even years." "I do not care how long it takes," Eliza said. "I just want to be free of him." The lawyer looked at Jack. "And what is your involvement in this, Mr. Owens?" "I am helping her," Jack said simply. "Whatever she needs." The lawyer's eyebrows rose slightly, but he did not comment further. "Very well. I will need a retainer to begin working on the case. $50. Jack winced internally but nodded. It was a significant chunk of his savings, but Eliza was worth it. He counted out the money and handed it over. The lawyer began drawing up papers, explaining the process and what they could expect. It was overwhelming, but Eliza listened intently, asking questions and taking it all in. When they finally left the office, the sun was high in the sky. They stopped at the general store to buy some supplies, and Jack noticed how people stared at them. News traveled fast in small towns, and he suspected everyone already knew that he had taken in a married woman. Let them talk, he thought fiercely. He did not care what anyone thought as long as Eliza was safe. On the ride back to the ranch, Eliza was quiet, lost in her own thoughts. Jack did not push her to talk, just kept the horse moving at a steady pace. When they finally arrived home, she turned to him with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. For believing me, for helping me, for spending your money on my freedom. I do not know how I will ever repay you." "You do not need to repay me," Jack said, helping her down from the horse. "I am doing this because I want to. Because you deserve better than what you have been given." She looked up at him, and then, standing on her toes, she pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. "I love you too, Jack. I think I have loved you since that first night when you gave me your coat. I just was too afraid to admit it." Jack's heart swelled in his chest, and he cupped her face gently in his hands. "We are going to get through this, together." "Together," she echoed, and there was hope in her voice for the first time. The next few weeks were tense. Robert did not return, but his presence hung over them like a dark cloud. The lawyer sent word that he had filed the divorce papers, and that Robert had been served. Robert immediately contested it, claiming that Eliza was a liar and that Jack had seduced her away from him. It was ugly and painful, and Jack watched Eliza struggle with the public nature of her private pain. But through it all, their bond only grew stronger. They spent their evenings talking by the fire, sharing stories from their pasts and dreams for their futures. Jack told her about his childhood in Ohio, about his parents who had died when he was young, about his late wife Margaret who had been kind but never quite understood him the way Eliza did. Eliza told him about her mother's dreams for her, about the books she had read and the places she wanted to see someday. "When this is all over," Jack said one night, "where would you want to go, if you could go anywhere?" "I have always wanted to see the ocean," Eliza said wistfully. "I have read about it in books, but I cannot imagine what it must be like in person, all that water stretching on forever." "Then we will go," Jack promised. "As soon as you are free, we will take a trip to California and you can see the ocean." "Really?" Eliza asked, her eyes lighting up. "Really," Jack confirmed. "I want to give you all the things you have dreamed about. I want to make you happy." "You already make me happy," Eliza said softly. "Happier than I ever thought possible." They were sitting close together on the sofa, and Jack could feel the warmth of her body next to his. He wanted so badly to kiss her, to hold her properly, but he knew they needed to wait. She was still married, and he would not compromise her reputation further, no matter how much he wanted her. As if reading his thoughts, Eliza said, "Sometimes I wish we could just run away together. Forget about the divorce and the laws and all of it. Just go somewhere no one knows us and start fresh." "We could," Jack said. "But you would always be looking over your shoulder, always wondering if Robert would find you. This way, when it is done, it will be done properly. You will be truly free." "I know," Eliza sighed. "You are right. I just wish it did not take so long." "Good things are worth waiting for," Jack said, and he meant it, even though the waiting was killing him too. In April, they received word that there would be a hearing. The judge wanted to hear testimony from both Eliza and Robert before making any decisions about the divorce. The lawyer warned them that it would not be pleasant, that Robert would likely say terrible things about Eliza to make himself look better. But Eliza was determined to see it through. On the day of the hearing, they dressed in their best clothes and rode into town together. The courthouse was a simple wooden building, and inside the air was thick with tension. Robert was already there with his own lawyer, and when he saw Eliza, his face twisted with rage. "You lying witch," he hissed as they passed. "You will regret this." Jack stepped between them instinctively, but Eliza put a hand on his arm. "It is all right," she said, though her voice trembled. "He cannot hurt me here." The hearing was brutal. Robert took the stand first and painted a picture of himself as a devoted husband whose wife had abandoned him for another man. He claimed that Eliza was mentally unstable, that she made up stories about abuse to justify her infidelity. He said that Jack had manipulated her and stolen her away. Jack watched Eliza's face as Robert spoke, seeing her fight back tears. When it was her turn to testify, she stood with her head held high and told the truth. She described the beatings in detail, the threats, the fear she had lived with every day. She showed the judge her scars, the faded bruises that still marked her arms and back. She spoke about the night she fled, about breaking the cellar window with bleeding hands, about walking through the snow until she collapsed in Jack's barn. "I did not leave because I was unhappy," she said, her voice strong despite her tears. "I left because I believed my husband was going to kill me, and I stand by that belief. If I had stayed one more day, I might not be here to testify." The judge listened intently, his face impassive. When both sides had finished, he called for a recess to consider the evidence. Jack and Eliza waited outside, neither of them speaking. Jack held her hand tightly, trying to give her strength. After what felt like hours, they were called back in. The judge looked at them somberly. "This is a difficult case," he began. "On one hand, we have a husband claiming his rights to his wife. On the other hand, we have evidence of significant cruelty and abuse. I have listened to both testimonies carefully, and I have examined the physical evidence presented." Jack felt Eliza's hand tighten in his. "It is my judgment that there is sufficient evidence of extreme cruelty to warrant a divorce. Mrs. Turner, you are hereby granted a divorce from Robert Turner on the grounds of physical abuse and cruelty. Mr. Turner, you are ordered to stay at least 100 yards away from Miss Turner at all times. If you violate this order, you will be arrested. This court is adjourned." For a moment, there was stunned silence. Then Eliza let out a sob of relief and collapsed against Jack. He caught her, holding her up as she cried. They had won. She was free. Robert exploded in rage, shouting obscenities at the judge and at Eliza. The sheriff had to physically restrain him and escort him from the courthouse. Jack watched him go, feeling a fierce satisfaction. The man could never hurt Eliza again. Outside the courthouse, Eliza stood in the spring sunshine with tears streaming down her face. "I am free," she kept saying. "I am actually free." "You are free," Jack confirmed, pulling her into a tight embrace. "And you are safe. And you never have to be afraid of him again." She looked up at him, and in her eyes he saw joy and relief and love. "Can we go home now?" "Yes," Jack said, smiling. "Let us go home." The ride back to the ranch felt different, somehow lighter. Eliza laughed more easily, and the tension that had been present in her shoulders for months finally eased. When they arrived home, Jack helped her down from the horse, and then, without overthinking it, he leaned down and kissed her. It was their first real kiss, and it was everything Jack had imagined and more. Eliza melted against him, her arms wrapping around his neck as she kissed him back with a passion that took his breath away. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless and smiling. "I have wanted to do that for so long," Jack admitted. "Me too," Eliza said, her cheeks flushed. "So what is stopping you from doing it again?" Jack laughed and kissed her again and then again, making up for all the months of waiting. They stood in the yard, wrapped in each other's arms as the sun set behind the mountains. It felt like the beginning of something beautiful. That night, as they sat by the fire, Jack took Eliza's hand in his. "I know we have not been together long, not properly anyway, but I know what I want. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Eliza. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night. I want to build a life together, a real life. Will you marry me?" Eliza's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Yes, 1,000 times yes. I want all of that too. I want everything with you, Jack." He kissed her again, slower this time, savoring the taste of her lips and the feel of her in his arms. This was what happiness felt like, he realized. This warmth in his chest, this certainty that he had found the person he was meant to be with. After years of loneliness and grief, he had found love again in the most unexpected place. They were married in June, in a small ceremony at the church in Verdi. The lawyer who had helped with Eliza's divorce attended, along with a few of Jack's friends from town. Eliza wore a simple white dress that Jack had bought her, and she had flowers in her hair. She looked beautiful, radiant with happiness. As Jack stood at the altar and watched her walk toward him, he felt his heart swell with love and gratitude. Life had a funny way of working out, he thought. He had lost everything once, but he had been given a second chance at happiness. And this time, he was not going to take it for granted. "I love you," he whispered as she reached him. "I love you too," she whispered back. They exchanged vows and rings, promising to love and honor each other for the rest of their lives. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Jack kissed Eliza with all the love in his heart, and the small gathering erupted in applause. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and food spread out for everyone to enjoy. People danced and laughed and celebrated, and Jack could not remember the last time he had felt so content. He danced with Eliza under the stars, holding her close and marveling at how much his life had changed in just a few short months. "What are you thinking about?" Eliza asked, looking up at him. "I am thinking about how lucky I am," Jack said honestly. "How close I came to missing this. If I had not gone to the barn that night, if I had not found you, my life would be so different, so much emptier." "I am the lucky one," Eliza insisted. "You saved my life, Jack, in every way that matters. You gave me hope when I had none. You gave me love when I thought I did not deserve it. You gave me a future." "We gave each other a future," Jack corrected, "and I cannot wait to see what it holds." Their first year of marriage was full of joy and discovery. They learned each other's rhythms and habits, the small things that made them unique. Jack learned that Eliza liked to sing while she cooked, that she was terrible at waking up early but wonderful at making him laugh. Eliza learned that Jack was meticulous about caring for the horses, that he had a soft spot for stray animals, that he could be surprisingly romantic when the mood struck him. They worked together on the ranch, building it up into something more prosperous. Eliza had a good head for business, and she suggested they start breeding horses instead of just raising them. It turned out to be a brilliant idea, and soon they had buyers coming from all over Montana to purchase their stock. In their second year of marriage, Eliza discovered she was pregnant. She told Jack one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, her voice nervous and excited all at once. "Are you sure?" Jack asked, his eyes wide. "The doctor confirmed it today," Eliza said. "We are going to have a baby, Jack, in about 6 months." Jack let out a whoop of joy and lifted her off her feet, spinning her around until she laughed and begged him to put her down. "We are having a baby," he kept saying, unable to believe it. "We are going to be parents." "Are you happy?" Eliza asked, though she could clearly see that he was. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Jack said, cupping her face in his hands. "You have given me everything, Eliza. A home, a family, a reason to wake up every morning. I love you so much." "I love you too," Eliza said and kissed him softly. The pregnancy was not easy. Eliza suffered from terrible sickness in the early months, and Jack worried constantly. But as her belly grew and the baby began to move, his excitement overcame his fear. He would spend hours talking to her stomach, telling their unborn child stories and promises about the life they would have. In December, during a heavy snowstorm, Eliza went into labor. Jack rode into town to fetch the doctor, his heart in his throat the entire way. The labor was long and difficult, and Jack paced the floor outside the bedroom, listening to Eliza's cries and feeling helpless. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he heard a new sound, a baby's cry. The doctor emerged, looking tired but smiling. "You have a son, Mr. Owens, a healthy baby boy, and your wife is doing well." Jack rushed into the room and found Eliza propped up in bed, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked exhausted but more beautiful than he had ever seen her. She smiled at him through her tears. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Jack approached carefully, as if he might break something. He looked down at the baby in Eliza's arms and felt his world shift. The infant had dark hair like Eliza and was tiny and perfect. His eyes were closed, and he made small snuffling sounds that Jack found utterly endearing. "Can I hold him?" Jack asked. Eliza carefully transferred the baby into his arms, showing him how to support the head. Jack looked down at his son and felt tears prick his eyes. "Hello there, little one," he whispered. "I am your father, and I promise I am going to do everything I can to give you a good life." "What should we name him?" Eliza asked. They had discussed names during the pregnancy but had not settled on anything. Now, looking at their son, Jack said, "What about James, after your mother? Her maiden name was James, right?" Eliza's eyes filled with tears. "James Owens, that is perfect." She would have loved that. James, it is then, Jack said, kissing his son's forehead. Welcome to the world, James. You are already so loved. Parenthood transformed them both. Jack discovered a patience he never knew he had, and Eliza bloomed into motherhood with natural grace. James was a happy baby, quick to smile and laugh, and he brought even more light into their lives. The ranch house that had once been so quiet and lonely was now filled with the sounds of family. When James was 2, Eliza became pregnant again. This time, she was less nervous and more excited. James needs a sibling, she said. I do not want him to grow up alone like I did. Their daughter was born on a warm spring morning, and she came into the world screaming lustily. They named her Margaret after Jack's first wife, because Eliza insisted. She was part of your life, Eliza said when Jack protested. She helped make you the man you are. We should honor that. Jack loved her even more for her generosity of spirit. Little Margaret, who they called Maggie, had her father's green eyes and her mother's dark hair. She was more spirited than James had been, demanding attention and affection from the moment she was born. The years passed in a blur of happiness. The ranch continued to prosper, and Jack and Eliza built a comfortable life for their growing family. They added rooms to the house, bought more land, hired help during the busy seasons. James grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved working with the horses. Maggie was wild and fearless, always climbing trees and getting into mischief. When Maggie was 4 and James was 6, Eliza became pregnant for the 3rd time. I think this is our last one, she told Jack. 3 children feels right. This pregnancy was the easiest of the 3, and their second son, Samuel, was born without complications. He was a calm, sweet baby who seemed content just to watch the world around him. Jack felt his heart expand to make room for this new love, amazed that he could love each of his children so much. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The children grew, and Jack and Eliza grew with them. There were hard times, of course. Years when the weather was bad and money was tight. Illnesses that scared them. Disagreements that required working through. But through it all, their love remained constant. One evening, when the children were older, Jack and Eliza sat on the porch together watching the sunset. It was something they still did regularly, this quiet time together at the end of the day. James was 15 now, Maggie was 13, and Samuel was 9. They were all inside doing their evening chores. Do you ever think about that night? Eliza asked suddenly. The night you found me in the barn, all the time, Jack admitted. I think about how close we came to missing each other, how different both our lives would be. I was so scared, Eliza remembered. I thought I was going to die out there in the cold, and then you appeared like some kind of angel. I could not believe someone would be kind to me after everything I had been through. You were so brave, Jack said. Even then, half frozen and terrified, you were brave. You asked to work for warmth, not begged for charity. You had so much strength even when you did not realize it. I found my strength because of you, Eliza said, reaching for his hand. You showed me what love was supposed to look like. What a real partnership was. You gave me back my life. We gave each other life, Jack corrected, squeezing her hand. I was just existing before you came along, going through the motions. You reminded me what it meant to really live. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, hands clasped, watching the sun sink below the mountains. 20 years had passed since that fateful night, and they had built a beautiful life together. A life full of love and family and purpose. I would do it all again, Eliza said softly. Every difficult moment, every struggle. I would do it all again if it meant ending up here with you. Me too, Jack agreed. Every single second. As if on cue, the door burst open and their children spilled out onto the porch. "Ma, James is being mean," Maggie complained, though there was no real heat in her voice. "I am not being mean, I am being honest," James retorted. "You cannot just take my things without asking." "Both of you stop it," Eliza said, but she was smiling. "James, share with your sister." "Maggie, ask before you take things." "Samuel, what are you doing?" Their youngest was examining something in his hands. "I found a bird with a hurt wing," he explained. "Can we fix it?" Jack stood and walked over to Samuel, looking at the small bird cradled in his son's hands. "We can try," he said. "Let us get some supplies and see what we can do." As the family headed inside together, Jack caught Eliza's eye and they shared a smile. This was their life now, noisy and chaotic and full of love, so different from the lonely existence he had known before. That night, after the children were in bed and the bird was settled in a box with food and water, Jack and Eliza lay together in their bed. Moonlight streamed through the window, casting silver shadows across the room. "Jack," Eliza said quietly. "Yes, thank you. For what?" "For everything. For saving me, for loving me, for giving me this life, for being the man you are. Just thank you." Jack pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Thank you for trusting me, for taking a chance on me, for making me happy every single day. I love you, Eliza Owens." "I love you too, Jack Owens," she whispered back. They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, just as they had every night for the past 20 years. Outside, the Montana wind whispered through the plains, and in the barn the horses slept peacefully. The ranch that had once been a place of loneliness had become a home full of warmth and love. As the years continued to pass, Jack and Eliza watched their children grow into adults. James took over much of the ranch work, showing the same dedication to the horses that his father had. He married a girl from town named Sarah, and they built a house on the property so they could stay close. Maggie, true to her adventurous spirit, left Montana to become a teacher in Denver, writing long letters home about her students and her life in the city. Samuel followed in his mother's footsteps and became a skilled businessman, helping to expand the ranch's breeding program into one of the most successful in the territory. Jack and Eliza became grandparents multiple times over. James and Sarah had 4 children who filled the ranch with energy and laughter. Even Maggie eventually returned to Montana with a husband and 2 children of her own, deciding that she wanted her kids to grow up with the same connection to the land that she had. Samuel married late, to a woman who had been widowed young, and they had 1 daughter together whom they doted on endlessly. As they grew older, Jack and Eliza spent more time on the porch, watching their grandchildren play in the yard where their own children had played. They held hands and told stories about the old days, about the night they met and the struggles they had overcome. Their grandchildren never tired of hearing about how Grandma had been saved by Grandpa in the barn, how he had given her his coat and promised to keep her safe. "It is the most romantic story ever," their granddaughter Emma declared one day. "Like something from a book. It is even better because it is real," Eliza told her, smiling at Jack. "Real love is always better than anything you can read in a book." One winter evening, when Jack was 71 and Eliza was 68, they sat together by the fire in the house that had been their home for over 40 years. Snow fell softly outside, and Jack was reminded of that night so long ago when he had found Eliza in his barn. "Do you remember what you said to me that night?" he asked her. "I will work for warmth," Eliza quoted, her voice still strong despite her age. "I was so cold and so scared. I could not believe it when you brought me inside and took care of me, when you asked for nothing in return." "You gave me everything in return," Jack said. "You gave me love and family and happiness. You gave me a reason to live again." "We saved each other," Eliza said, settling against his shoulder. "That is what love does. It saves us." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire crackle and listening to the sounds of their family moving around in the house. James and Sarah lived with them now, helping to care for them as they aged. The grandchildren visited often, and the house was rarely quiet. "I am tired," Eliza said softly, "but it is a good tired, the tired that comes from a life well lived." "Are you happy?" Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible," Eliza confirmed. "You made me happy, Jack, every single day." "You made me happy too," Jack said, kissing the top of her head. "You were my second chance, my miracle." They fell asleep that way, wrapped up together by the fire. In the morning, they would wake to the sound of their grandchildren's laughter and the smell of breakfast cooking. They would face another day together, as they had faced every day for the past 4 decades. With love, with partnership, with the deep certainty that they had found something rare and precious. The ranch continued to thrive under James's management, and Jack took pride in knowing that the legacy he and Eliza had built would continue for generations. Samuel's business acumen ensured the ranch's financial stability, and Maggie's children brought fresh energy and ideas whenever they visited. On their 50th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered for a celebration. The house overflowed with children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. Someone had hired a photographer, and Jack and Eliza stood together surrounded by their family, their faces weathered by time but still showing the love that had sustained them through the years. 50 years, Eliza marveled as they cut the cake. Half a century. "It feels like both forever and no time at all. Best 50 years of my life," Jack declared, raising his glass. "To my beautiful wife who has made every day an adventure, I love you more now than I did on the day we married." "I love you more too," Eliza said, her eyes suspiciously bright. "Thank you for finding me in that barn all those years ago. Thank you for giving me warmth and safety and love. Thank you for being mine." The family cheered and clapped, and Jack kissed his wife to more cheers. Later, after everyone had left and the house was quiet again, they sat on the porch one more time, watching the sun set over the mountains they had called home for so long. "No regrets?" Jack asked. "Not a single one," Eliza replied firmly. "You? Only that I did not find you sooner," Jack said. "But I am grateful for every moment we have had." "Me too," Eliza agreed. "Even the hard ones. They made us stronger." As the years advanced and their bodies grew frailer, Jack and Eliza faced the reality of aging together. They needed more help with daily tasks and they spent more time resting. But their love never wavered. They still held hands, still exchanged knowing glances across the room, still found joy in each other's presence. Jack passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 76, with Eliza holding his hand. She mourned him deeply, but she also celebrated the incredible life they had built together. She lived another 3 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, telling stories about Jack and their adventures. She spoke often about that first night, about how a chance encounter had changed both their lives forever. When Eliza passed, also peacefully in her sleep, the family buried her next to Jack on a hill overlooking the ranch. The headstone reads simple words that captured the essence of their love. "Together in life, together in death, together in love forever." The ranch remained in the family, passed down through generations. James's children took over when he grew too old, and their children after them. Each generation heard the story of Jack and Eliza, of how their great-great-grandparents had met on a cold winter night and built a legacy of love that endured through the decades. The barn where Eliza had hidden that fateful night was eventually replaced with a newer structure, but the family kept a plaque on the spot marking where it had stood. The plaque read, Here began a love story that built a family. February 1884. In the house, now renovated and modernized but still standing on the same foundation Jack had built, hung a photograph of Jack and Eliza on their 50th anniversary. They stood together, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling at the camera. But if you looked closely, you could see that they were actually looking at each other. That same love and devotion visible in their expressions that had been there from the beginning. Their story became a legend in the family, told and retold, a reminder of the power of kindness, the strength of love, and the way two broken people can heal each other and build something beautiful. It was a testament to the fact that sometimes the darkest moments in our lives can lead to the brightest futures, and that love, real love, can overcome any obstacle. The Montana plains still stretched endlessly under big skies, just as they had when Jack first found Eliza shivering in his barn. The wind still whispered through the grass, and the mountains still stood eternal in the distance. But where once there had been a lonely cowboy living in isolation, there was now a thriving ranch filled with life and love and laughter, all because one man chose kindness and one woman chose courage, and together they chose each other. Their love story was not about grand gestures or dramatic declarations, though it had its share of both. It was about the quiet moments, the daily choices to love and support each other, the commitment to building a life together no matter what challenges came their way. It was about transformation and healing, about second chances and new beginnings. And it all started with 4 simple words, whispered in the darkness of a winter night. I will work for warmth. Those words had led to a lifetime of warmth, not just physical warmth from shelter and fire, but the warmth of love, of family, of home. The warmth that comes from being truly seen and accepted and cherished by another person. The warmth that Jack and Eliza had given each other, and that had radiated outward to touch everyone around them. Their descendants continued to live on the ranch, continuing the traditions Jack and Eliza had started. Every winter, on the anniversary of the night they met, the family would gather for a special dinner. They would raise their glasses and toast to Jack and Eliza, to the love that had started their family, to the reminder that kindness and courage can change the world. The story of the lonely cowboy and the shivering woman became more than just family history. It became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, salvation might be just around the corner. That love can find us when we least expect it, and that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with the smallest acts of compassion. And so the legacy continued, generation after generation, all tracing back to that cold February night in 1884 when Jack Owens went out to check on his horses and found instead the love of his life, shivering in his barn, offering to work for warmth, and receiving instead a home, a family, and a love that would echo through the ages.